There we go. Good morning, everyone, just once again, and welcome to Expelo's Morning this morning. We are talking about what to expect about of evictions. Zelda, I'm going to hand over to you if you can continue letting all the participants in, and I'm going to start sharing my screen, that we can start discuss the very thing. You know, it feels like that one thing that people don't talk about. Everybody knows it happens, but nobody wants to talk about it. And the big reason for this is because we know that it's dreaded. And many times is because maybe we don't know everything what to expect. So we're going to run through the whole process, and I'm not going to teach you guys, I'm not going to discuss what an eviction entails. I'm not going to discuss the flow, what is an eviction process. I'm going to talk about the practical things, especially what we've seen up to now. So there we go. What we've seen in the past months is what landlords and many agents expect from an eviction. Many of them think what you just do is you purely go and you give them an eviction notice. You'll see there on the right-hand side is that very nice notice. Because in all the movies, that's where we see that. We see the people come to their door, the door is locked, and there's an evictor's notice, and it's the end of the story. Now, unfortunately, that is not how it works in South Africa. The second thing that I hear a lot is that no, so we can just go lock the door because there's no lease. You cannot just go lock the door. But I think the important part is the reason why. And that couples with taking occupations. I hear a lot of people telling me, Elise, but there's no lease agreement, so technically I can take occupation of my property again. It means either I will move back in, or I will I'll let somebody else move in. So they think that is okay. That is not how the process works. So in this junction, I'm going to say everybody has to remember a owner has two rights pertaining to their property. The first one is ownership. So they own the property. That means they can sell the property, they can take a bond out on the property. They don't have to talk to the tenant about this. This is their rights, and they keep that right. The second right they have is occupation. What that means is this is the right to move into your property. Now, the moment you enter into a lease agreement with someone, you give that right away. So that means you cannot just go in. Yes, you are the owner, but you have given your right to occupation to the tenant when you entered into that lease agreement. So for a moment, just for this sake, is where do we look at that? That is when, at the inception time, that we say, okay, you now have two rights. You want to enter into a lease agreement. You are now going to give the right to occupation to your tenant. And you do it in terms of this lease agreement. If this lease agreement is cancelled, it doesn't jump, that right of occupation doesn't jump back to you. It doesn't come back to you automatically. The courts went and they put out a process to say, listen, if somebody is in your property and have occupation illegally, they should then proceed to follow the eviction process in terms of fine. They have put this in place, not because of people not, sorry, just want to say, Zelda, there's a lot of people in the waiting room. Please, will you let them in? It's popping up the whole time. So one of the things that we have to remember is many times people didn't follow the rules, or in the past there was no rules. So the only thing that the PI Act proceeded to do was to set out a process. It wasn't to pick anybody's side. It is to say that in the past, landlords didn't follow the right process, or they acted illegally or unreasonably or unfairly. And tenants, you have to know there's also a limit. So how do we govern this? Is we set out a set of rules as to how to act once that lease agreement is finished and you no longer have right to occupation. Landlord, how do you take it back? It is almost like a handover. Think about it. If you do work, you do a handover, you need to hand it over and you have to take it back. It's not just like somebody can come and take everything off your hands. So that is the purpose of the Act. The Act is not there to prejudice or pick sides, but it's important to know what it entails. Many landlords, unfortunately, they want to believe that if you lease out a property, there is no risk involved. And unfortunately, with anything you do, there is a risk involved. What do I mean by that? If you want to invest in shares, there's a risk. I mean, Steiner. And do I need to say more? If you want to invest in a business, there's risk involved. It can be either booming or it can go down. If you want to put your money in the bank, that's the safest one almost. But there's a risk involved because the interest rate can either go up or down. So you might either get that much money or lower money. I'm quite sure we won't have the debacle of the bank just being liquidated, but there is different options. Then the other option is they have to know that even with this property, it's a safe property. It's not like gambling, but there is risks involved. And I always think that that's an important thing that has to be discussed with landlords. And very often people don't do this. Because let's face it, agents, the competition is high. And you want to, when you present or talk to your landlord, you want to paint a rosy picture in order for them to pick you and not the other agent. But to be honest, if you are really taking that landlord into your confidence and you are there because you're the expert, you are going to guide him through this process. I am sure that they're going to become more, they're going to trust you more than anyone that just promises them the sky and the stars and everything without being realistic. So does it mean that when you speak to a landlord, you should be all doom and gloom? Not at all. But when do you have the discussion? I think that is the big question. So when do we have the discussion about what to expect from an eviction and everything with your landlord? I almost want to say at the beginning, when you have the discussion regarding your mandate, when you discuss your breach process with your mandate, say, landlord, what we offer you is to manage your property. And not just to send out the invoices, because we all know that's what landlords think. You guys just said invoices, but that is not what you do. But to say to them, listen, we've got the following in place. Because although we know we've done the best vetting, we have everything in place and we would not have placed this tenant if we knew there was any possibility that this person will default or will be evicted. I would not have placed this person. However, this is the history. I have to make provision for the odd 2, 5 or 6% of the future because I have no control over the future. Like load shedding. I saw the stats yesterday of the people going, what is currently happening with unemployment just because of load shedding. That is scary. I mean, the past best example is COVID. That's something that nobody even could have anticipated. So we say, although everything looks secure and good now, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And therefore, we have to ask the difficult question. So do you have something in place? Should your tenant default and we need to evict? Because the biggest obstacle that agents have is that landlords didn't prepare for this. Because it was never discussed with them, that it wasn't explained to them how to manage this. So to say to them, do you have something in place should this ever be needed? And we hope we never need it. That is, of course, where I always say it's a good option to suggest Expello. Or if they are fine for anything available, then that is fine. That's the first instance. The second instance is when the tenant breach. The most important part is to manage the owner's expectations. And if it's not an Expello client, also discuss and be realistic with your tenant. Don't say that we're going to get payment tomorrow if you're not sure if you're going to get payment tomorrow. Be careful with your wording. Just say, we are pushing and we have requested that payment is made by this day. They have given the undertaking. Now we wait to see. Okay, because you can't do more than that. To say to them, this is what happens on the breach process. We have to send them a 20 business day letter. So for 20 business days, I can't go and throw them out. We have started the process. One can only cancel the lease agreement after these 20 business days. You guys must be proud of the process you follow. You are not just leaving it to chance. You have to say, we do the best to get somebody in place. And then if something goes wrong, we are ready. We've got our breach process in place. No later than the 5th of the month, we send out our letter of demand. But after a week, we hand over to Expello. Or what we do is this is what we do. And by this time, we will advise you whether you need to go see an attorney or whether we're going to proceed with the eviction. Communication, regular communication. Then also, when a tenant needs to be evicted, please have the conversation with your landlords. If it's not an Expello client and they don't have the money, don't just proceed to cancel. The reason being, the moment you cancel, you are no longer entitled to rent. So you can't send invoices asking for rent. Now, I know a lot of people, and the way that it's been fixed in the past is, okay, but just send an invoice asking for damages suffered. Yes, but I've seen too many times that oopsies sort of creep in. So either what happens is they accidentally ask for rent, and the problem with that is you sort of reinstate, you put a lease in place. Now, we can't say reinstatement because there's nothing to say that we fall back on the original lease. Or is it just a normal, you stay there and you have to pay me for being stayed? Is it a new lease agreement? I would say, if your landlord doesn't have the money to proceed with an eviction, don't cancel, continue to put on pressure. The moment they are ready, then they can cancel and they can proceed. The other thing that is important to note, except that they can't ask for rent, is that if they are illegal for more than 6 months, the matter changes and the municipality gets involved and they have to provide a report if they can provide them with alternative accommodation, which normally in a lease agreement situation should not be applicable. So you never want somebody to be illegal for more than 6 months. So ideally, have the conversation beforehand. Don't just cancel. If you cancel and they suddenly make a payment, please proceed to say, we hereby reinstate the original lease and refer to the original lease. That everybody is sure that they know on what is the terms and conditions of the lease that is being reinstated. That everybody, because I know also in practice that some people do use it as a scaring tactic. If your landlords don't have money for an eviction, don't let them issue, but they want to issue summons. Remember, a summons asking for money is not going to evict them. Also, during that time period, the arrears is just going to grow, and to get judgment can easily take 4 to 6 months. Also, just because you get judgment does not mean you get money. A judgment means, yes, you have a judgment, you can go and attach. I'm going to be honest. You guys have seen some of these units. There's nothing of real value to go and attach. It's going to cost you more money to send the sheriff there, remove it, put it in storage to sell it, than to actually sell the stuff. And you know who he's going to be upset with? Everyone. He's going to be upset with the agent. He's going to be upset with the attorneys because it's costing me more money. So manage the expectations. So that is one of the few things that I really want to manage. So I said, you have the conversation, I said, at the start of the relationship. Also, you know why it's easy to have that conversation then? Because it's light. It's not really, in their minds, it's not really a possibility. If I can use that, think about it. If you are healthy and good health, and you are good and young and everything looks good, and somebody tells you to prepare your will, it's easy. Because I can now put a lot of things in my will, because technically I think I'm not going to need it now. I'm going to live a long time. Ne? I'm going to say, this one can go stay there because it's easier, because it's not going to be applicable now. If you're on your deathbed and you have to do a will, then it's pressure, because you know you're going to need it shortly. Maybe not the best example, but I hope you guys get the understanding of what I'm trying to explain. Can I get a few thumbs up, at least? Oh, thank you, Tandy. Is it Gregory? I see your face. Thank you, Carla. Thank you. Okay, so you guys understand what I'm saying. It's easier to talk about something before it is an issue. Manage the options, and it builds trust. Nee? Nobody trusts that sales guy, nee, that sells your car, that everything is just 100%. People trust the guy that is honest. Listen, this car works very hard and it looks beautiful, but the petrol is going to be super expensive. You're going to appreciate that. So be honest, and I see it builds a relationship. That's what you want, because if you have a relationship with your landlord, they're going to stick with you forever. Then we've discussed it, to say when to discuss it again during the breach and the eviction process. I think there's 2 points here that is important. Don't let the pressure of the landlord cause you to overcommit or do something that doesn't fall in line with the process. I know it's hard, not nice. Landlords these days are super aggressive. They come on you hard. So don't bend under pressure. It's a hard thing to say, but it's super important. Also, if you've done all of your vetting to the best of your ability, and somebody now loses their job and nobody could have foreseen it, remember, it's not your fault the tenant didn't pay. It's important. It's only your fault if you knew this tenant should not have been placed and you still advised the landlord to take the tenant. Yes, then you can feel guilt. But I mean, that's like the 1% out there. 99% of agents take all steps because they don't want the tenant to default, because they don't want that headaches, because they know the landlord is going to tell everyone that this is this problem they have. So if you've done everything by the book, remember, doesn't matter how hard the landlord screams at you, it's not your fault. So it's time for an eviction. Guys, what to expect? We know now that it's not going to happen overnight. An eviction unopposed takes about 3 months. We just in Gauteng got this very big shocker that in the High Court, evictions went very fast, and suddenly it said, no, now we have to wait about 6 weeks just for a court date. We're pulling back our papers and going, okay, which other should we go back to the magistrates' courts? That is what people are considering. So, and that's something that comes on our way that nobody has control over. We can't control the courts. So an eviction is almost, it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. I'm not going to go there and kick them out today. The process starts with an application. Most attorneys use an application. And if it's an expeller client, we do all of the paperwork for them. But an eviction is a 3-phase process. Well, actually a 4-phase if it's unopposed. You have your main application that gets served. You have your interim application, which it's just an extra notice that is given to the tenant to say, listen, we are evicting you. And then you have the eviction date. And then if they don't vacate, the 4th process is the ejectment stage. So we have to tell them that we can't do it faster because there is rules in place. So when you speak to somebody, we always do it and say, listen, an eviction takes about 3 months. I used to say 12 to 18 weeks. I realize it's much better to prepare them for the worst, and then we overperform. That's always better. We use specialist attorneys. We have no control of other attorneys being used. But I mean, the attorneys that we deal only work with evictions, but they have no control over what's happening. Gregory is asking a question. Ooh, I'm so sorry, I didn't read the whole question. So I'm going to leave this question for now, and I'll address it later. I owe you a chocolate. Okay, I'll make a note. Zelda, please, we have to get this man's address. Okay, I threw him under the bus. Unintentionally, I could some feel I'm going red. That's how bad I'm feeling. Sorry. So I'll go back to that one. The other thing is, always know that from Expello's side is we will do absolutely everything to prevent any delays. So if we say, this is the date we got, we already have fought with the attorneys, we have fought everyone, and we know this is absolutely the best we can get. It is our job to fight for our clients and the landlords. So this is the eviction process. And I think this has really been discussed in many occasions with a lot of people as to, the whole eviction process. And then, especially with Expello, we go and say, listen, we get you the eviction order. And up until recently, I think in the past, I want to say before this year, past 5.5 years, we only had to send the sheriff once. So it never been a real issue. But now the big thing is, our order has been granted, and what now? The big thing is, your court order stipulates usually, they have to vacate the 31st of May. If they don't, the sheriff can go there on the 1st of June to evict them. That sounds practical and nice. But what it really entails is, we have to wait until the 1st to see if they did not vacate. If they did not vacate, then we go to court and they issue a writ of ejectment. Now, Expello will still help with that to get that writ of ejectment. That with some courts it takes same day, some courts it takes 2 days, some courts it takes a week just to get that writ back. Their processes. For them to stamp it, it comes with an indemnity. So it takes a week, for example, to get the writ back. Now we have the writ, it goes to the sheriff. Now, I hope you guys like my little man here, my sheriff guy. They don't look like that at all, and they definitely don't have guns, just to say. But then this document, because it's an officer of the court, it goes to them because they're the only ones that can go and physically remove the tenant. What they will then do is they will ask for a deposit. Now, what we've seen is from January to now, suddenly it's the first time that we have to deal with 2 of them. We actually have one hopefully going on today. We wanted to send somebody to take some pictures as well. I won't say who's everybody sitting on the edge of these chairs. But what happens is the sheriffs need a deposit. This is the one in Gauteng, and we had one in Cape Town, and all of them I see standard is asking for a deposit of 10,000 Rand. They didn't have a look at the property, they haven't done anything, but that's what they're asking. Remember, this 10,000 Rand is not paid by Expello. This is for the owner's account. I also have to say, even with these two having it feels to us like a drastic increase of evictions that has to be enforced, it is still less than 0.01% of all of the Expello people on our books. So I want to say this because we don't want to say we're going to need to throw everybody specifically out, but we have to warn you and say we are seeing an increase of this and what to expect from the process. So the sheriff then gets their deposit, and then they go have a look as where is the property, how big is the property. Apparently it has a difference if it's on the first floor, the fifth floor, is it a ground unit, is it a 6-bed, is it a 1-bed? All of this has an impact, because remember, the sheriff is not going to load it in the van, they're just going to carry it out. They're not going to use bubble wrap either. So they're going to carry everything into the street, and they're going to change the locks. So we ideally would arrange and say, change the locks, because at that stage, the tenant is not going to be nice and give us the keys, no? And they're not going to do a little wrestling match to get the keys. They really just go change the locks and get new keys, which is on many occasions much better. So even if after we got the eviction order, please do not just go and place new tenants in a unit, except if you are sure that they're going to vacate. And how are we going to be sure if they vacate? You'll see if they started moving boxes. You will see if there's a movement. If you've arranged a handover of the keys. I mean, we've seen this now. With this guy, we've arranged a handover of the keys like 6 times. And every time nothing just happens. But you can see if somebody is really going, or there's going to be a problem. Because if I'm packing up my whole house, I'm not going to start packing on the day that I need to move. You're going to start packing at least a week beforehand, because there's a lot of stuff. So that is how we can sort of say to the owners, listen, I can start advertising, but if I'm not 100% sure that this person will vacate, because in the middle of the month, they should have found another place to stay by now. And if I can't start, that conversations with the tenants are going to be super important. Once they are out, then you can place a tenant. If you went to place the tenant before the tenant is out, guys, there is a risk of damages towards the landlord. Because remember, the new tenant has been granted vacant occupation, and now they don't have that. So there's always a risk involved, and we will always discuss everything in time. Remember, our orders granted in a High Court or the Magistrates Court works exactly the same. So once that orders are granted in the High Court or the Magistrates Court, you'll get your writ, they issue it, and that writ you go to the sheriff and they will throw them out. Okay, so that's the situation with the warrant. I just want to see here. Miriam is asking a question. Can the sheriff lock the premises if the tenant is not home when the sheriff arrives? Yes. They don't even have to have the tenant there. They will forcefully open the locks, go in, take everything out, and put it on the street. So they have the authority to do all of that. Ideally, in a complex, we sort of say, let's move them all the way out. Then that is a thing. So that's the nice thing of an eviction order. It is enforceable. The only way that you're going to stay that order is if they appeal it, not to give people suggestions. But that is how it will be worked with. Any questions? It feels like I talked a lot, and I don't want to be like a bit of a doom and gloom type of person. But I think always it is important to note as to what to expect and what is the processes. Expella is also always learning as well. And we're going to work on some material as to share with your owners when we get to that process, as to what to expect. Miriam also asked a question, also, who pays the sheriff's total cost? Miriam, if it's not an eviction client, if it's an eviction client or not an eviction client, the owner will pay that full amount. They can recover it from the tenant at a later stage, but it will be for the owner's account beforehand. So what will happen is many times they pay the 10,000 rand deposit, they can do their work. Then what they'll do is they do a return and they'll give their final calculations. So they will say, we spent 6 hours at this property. This is what we've done. This is the total cost. I want to say sometimes people get money back. I haven't seen the returns from the past 2 evictions that our clients had to go through, so we'll have to see that. So if the sheriff arrives and the tenant has opposed, must he have the court docs of opposition with him when the sheriff arrives? That's a question from Pietro. Pietro, remember, an eviction during the process, you can oppose it. Once the order is granted, it's granted. The only way to oppose that order is, for example, if he appeals it, if it's a high court, if it's a magistrate's court order, he has to go to the high court to appeal it. If it's a high court order, they must go to Bloemfontein. So they have to file a specific notice of appeal. So they can't just say, I opposed it. Well, if you opposed it, clearly you lost because the eviction order has been granted. So they can't just say that they oppose it at that junction. Okay. I hope I answer that question. Is there any other questions? We had a situation when the sheriff did go to the property now. Okay, so Gregory, what might have happened is sometimes the sheriff goes to the property, he looks at the whole situation firstly, and they give a notice. Now, sometimes it works. So that's actually what worked with our, not the 2 that we're doing now, previously. The sheriff went and they arrived and they said, hello, I've got an order, I'm going to evict you. I'm going to be here tomorrow morning, or I'm going to be here next week, Tuesday. Ne? So either you move yourself or I come and move you. And many times then the people vacate. Or if the sheriff goes there and he says, listen, I need the money, maybe the owners didn't pay the money for them to proceed. Remember, a sheriff is also a grudge buy. So they work as a pay-as-you-go. They don't go if they have not been paid. So that is also something to keep in mind. The video is going to be available. If there's any other questions that you guys think of or want or need, please let us know. Me and my team is always available. Thank you to my fantastic team that's always there to help. I'm going to tell you guys about when the event is in June. We're looking forward to that. And please remember about Madiba Day. Contact me. I would love to pack some food with all of you. Have an awesome day. Be safe. And yes, stay warm. Bye-bye.